I let them ruin my life for years. Then, my day of sweet revenge finally arrived. My billionaire boss was a total sociopath. He bought my restaurant just to treat the staff like absolute garbage. He'd scream at me in front of wealthy customers, cut our salaries without warning, and micromanage every single plate. The final straw? He fired me right before my shift on my 25th birthday, laughing straight in my face. He told me my food was tasteless trash and that I'd be flipping burgers next month. I just smiled. Oh, he didn't realize that his massive arrogance had blinded him to critical details. First, I already had a secret investor lined up to open a brand new, high-end restaurant right across the street from his place. Second, all the elite local food suppliers, the ones with rare meats that actually made his venue famous, were legally contracted to me personally. Not his business. I quietly transferred every single contract over. This meant his kitchen was suddenly left completely stranded without premium ingredients. But that was just the baseline setup. The real trap was set for his massive, highly anticipated grand opening night. He invited the city's top food critics, major influencers, and local politicians. It was supposed to be a $10,000 a ticket event to secure his first Michelin star. What he didn't know, I hijacked the digital ticket queue. I used a tech-savvy friend to run a specialized script the exact second tickets went live online. We bought out every single seat in the house using hundreds of burner accounts and fake shell companies. My ex-boss saw a completely sold-out seating map on his monitor and was absolutely ecstatic, popping expensive champagne in the back office. On the night of the event, the real critics arrived at the door, only to be turned away. The critics and politicians were completely furious as security blocked them. So who was actually sitting inside his luxury dining room? I had handed out all the free tickets to local college students, construction workers, and skate park kids. They showed up in baggy hoodies, blasted their own music, and happily ate the ultra-expensive caviar like it was cheap fast food. They loved it, but the online reviews? Absolute butchery. Hundreds of reviews flooded Yelp saying, "The portions are incredibly tiny, but hey, the free food was okay." My ex-boss went completely bankrupt in less than 4 months, because no serious critic would ever step foot in his building again. Meanwhile, my new restaurant across the street opened to absolute critical acclaim, stealing every single one of his old regular clients. But that's nothing compared to how a freelancer broke a millionaire. You see, a tech entrepreneur hired my close friend, a freelance web designer, to build a platform for his new luxury real estate agency. My friend worked insane 14-hour days for 2 months straight to make it perfect. The exact moment the site went live and started getting traffic, the millionaire blocked his number, ignored his emails, and vanished with the final $5,000 payment. He thought a broke freelancer couldn't fight back. Bad move. He assumed my friend couldn't afford a lawyer to fight him in court, and he was technically right about that. But as a developer, my friend had something much more powerful than a lawyer. Since he built the entire back-end infrastructure from scratch, he still possessed master administrative access to the site's Google SEO and metadata tags. He didn't crash the website. That's illegal. Instead, he quietly injected very specific lines of code. Whenever a wealthy client searched for luxury apartments or the owner's specific name, Google would index the site perfectly. However, my friend heavily customized the snippet description that appears right below the link. For 2 whole months, the owner couldn't understand why his office phone was completely silent. 0 leads. Until he finally decided to Google his own name to check his brand. What he saw made his blood run cold. The very first result on the front page of Google read, "Luxury agency warning, the owner is a fraud who refuses to pay his workers." Full evidence inside. If a client clicked the link, a giant, unclonable pop-up window appeared showing their legal contract and a live countdown timer. The owner discovered this exactly 20 minutes before a massive meeting with a foreign investor for a multi-million-dollar property deal. The foreign investor had Googled the owner's name in the back of his limousine on the way to the office, saw the shocking front page, and instantly canceled the entire contract via text. The arrogant owner was in such a massive panic that he wired my friend the $5,000 within 15 minutes, crying and begging him to take the code down. My friend took his sweet time replying, "That's tech, but manual labor revenge is even wilder." Take my neighbor, for example. He hired a highly recommended construction crew to completely renovate his suburban house. They turned out to be an absolute nightmare. They delayed the project for 6 months, constantly demanded extra cash for unforeseen issues, and left the walls crooked and the plumbing leaking. When he politely asked them to fix their obvious mistakes, the foreman laughed in his face and told him to go cry to a lawyer. The foreman told him, "Sue us, buddy. We're moving on to a real $500,000 project anyway." Big mistake. They didn't know my neighbor is a professional acoustic engineer who understands exactly how sound waves travel through solid structures. Before hiring a new, competent crew to fix their mess, he went to a specialized electronics market and bought 20 tiny, cheap, battery-powered circuit boards designed to emit a specific sound. This ultra-high-frequency beep went off every 10 minutes. It was almost imperceptible to the human ear at first, but highly irritating over time. He didn't hide them in his own house, though. Oh no, he tracked down their next major gig, a massive luxury apartment renovation for a very powerful, short-tempered local politician. Posing as a delivery driver, my neighbor walked onto the construction site during their lunch break. He slipped the tiny audio devices deep inside the hollow drywall gaps right before the crew sealed them up with plaster. The batteries were precisely calibrated to activate exactly 1 month later, right after the project was completely finished and the politician moved in. Sure enough, 4 weeks later, a faint, maddening, ghost-like screech started echoing through the luxury apartment every single night. It was impossible to locate. The high frequency bounced off the polished Italian tiles, making the source completely undetectable. The politician slowly began losing his mind from severe sleep deprivation. Convinced the contractors had sabotaged him to hide a construction mistake, he threatened to ruin their business permanently using his political influence. He forced the entire crew to come back and tear down thousands of dollars of brand new drywall at their own expense. The crew went completely broke trying to find the noise, destroying their own reputation in the process. It just shows you should never mess with an expert. But some people never learn, like my ex-girlfriend's new guy. He was a textbook narcissist who thought he was completely untouchable. He was cheating on her in her own apartment while she was away on business trips, and he was even using her credit card to buy gifts for his side chicks. When she finally caught him red-handed, he didn't even try to apologize. Instead, he packed his bags, looked her dead in the eye, and sneered, "You're just way too boring for me." With my new girl, I'm finally living life at full capacity. My friend didn't cry or break any of his things. She just waited for him to leave, opened her laptop, and logged into his saved accounts. He had stupidly left all his autofill passwords active. She didn't delete his profiles or change his passwords because that would alert him too quickly. She did something much more creative. She used his saved payment data to subscribe his primary bank card to dozens of the most bizarre, embarrassing online services she could find. But she adjusted the settings so that instead of a monthly fee, they charged tiny, random microtransactions every 2 days to avoid any bank fraud detection. He instantly became the proud premium member of a dating site for senior citizens, a daily VIP newsletter about breeding exotic snails, and a monthly delivery service that shipped boxes of live, hissing cockroaches straight to his door. He was suddenly trapped in a financial nightmare. Every single morning began with a random charge for the Flat Earth Society or throat singing lessons. But the absolute best part was yet to come. His bank kept blocking his card for suspicious activity, so he would order a new one. But the automated modern banking apps kept updating his new card info across all subscription services anyway. The ultimate climax happened when his new girlfriend arrived at his house and intercepted a massive delivery box filled with giant, hissing African cockroaches. Right as his phone buzzed with a premium alert from hot senior citizens near you, she dumped him on the spot. He lost his girl and his sanity over some bugs, which is hilarious, but karma works in office buildings too. In my dad's corporate office, there was this insufferable top-notch marketing executive. He drove a massive, ridiculously expensive luxury SUV and parked it horizontally across 2 or 3 parking spots every single day. He would completely block wheelchair ramps, fire hydrants, and regular employee cars without a single care. One rainy morning, he completely boxed in the car of a quiet, low-level IT systems administrator, causing him to miss a critical family event. When the IT guy politely asked him to move the SUV, the executive scoffed and said, "My time is worth thousands of dollars an hour, kid." Your little schedule can wait. The IT guy didn't key the car or slash the tires because he knew security cameras were watching. He chose a digital approach instead. He used his admin access to look up the executive's calendar and found out he was scheduled for the final round of interviews for a vice president position. The interview was with strict corporate directors flying in from Germany, and punctuality was their #1 rule. The night before the interview, the IT guy bought a powerful pocket-sized signal jammer from an underground electronics forum and flipped the switch on. He walked past the SUV in the dark and magnetically attached the tiny jammer deep inside the rear wheel well. The device completely blocked all radio frequencies within a 3-meter radius. The next morning, the executive walked out in a flawless tailored suit, pressed his key fob, and nothing happened. The doors remained locked. The car's computer couldn't detect the smart key at all because the signal was totally suppressed. He began to panic violently as the clock ticked closer to 10. He tried to force the door open using the emergency physical key, which instantly triggered the vehicle's loud anti-theft alarm. It started blaring across the entire corporate courtyard. He couldn't turn it off. He had to abandon the car and call an Uber, but morning traffic was brutal. He arrived at the high-stakes board meeting 45 minutes late, sweating and disheveled. The German directors, who absolutely loathed tardiness, didn't even let him sit down to present. They gave the executive position to his direct rival that very afternoon. As the disgraced executive walked back to his ruined SUV, the IT guy casually walked past, pulled the magnet off the wheel well, and slipped it into his pocket. The car instantly unlocked perfectly. But wait until you hear how a petty landlord got absolutely destroyed. My college roommate rented a small apartment from a notoriously greedy landlord. When it was time to move out, the apartment was spotless, but the landlord refused to return the $2,000 security deposit. He claimed there was microware on the floorboards and instantly blocked my roommate's number. My roommate knew the landlord was a massive neat freak who bragged about his property value, so he decided to leave a permanent mark. Before handing over the keys, my roommate bought a massive bag of raw, unhulled chia seeds and a cheap spray bottle. He mixed the seeds with water and lightly sprayed the mixture into the deep, dark gaps of the closet tracks, behind the heavy wooden baseboards, and deep inside the master bedroom's plush carpets. Chia seeds are incredibly resilient and grow rapidly in dark, damp spaces without needing any direct sunlight at all. 2 weeks later, the landlord turned off the apartment's air conditioning to save money while waiting for new tenants. The summer humidity trapped moisture inside the sealed rooms, creating a perfect tropical greenhouse. Within days, a literal jungle of thick green sprouts began bursting out from the walls, baseboards, and floors. It looked like an apocalyptic movie scene. The landlord had to pay $5,000 to rip up the floors. The landlord tried to sue, but there was zero legal proof connecting my roommate to a bunch of naturally growing seeds. He got his karma, but honestly, nothing beats a classic high school revenge story. Back in my sophomore year, there was a massive bully named Chad who targeted the quiet kids. He excelled at sports but cheated on every single test by stealing notes from the smart kids and threatening them with violence if they spoke up. Our quiet classmate, Alex, was his main target. Chad would throw Alex's backpack into the trash and copy his advanced physics homework every week. The final straw was when Chad stole Alex's original science fair project idea, presented it as his own, and won a prestigious $500 scholarship. Alex didn't fight him physically. Instead, he waited until the final, state-mandated calculus exam that dictated college admissions. Chad, as usual, cornered Alex in the hallway before the exam and whispered, "Put your answer sheet on the left edge of your desk so I can see it clearly, or you're dead after school." Alex nodded fearfully and agreed. During the exam, Alex filled out his answer sheet with flawless precision, placing it exactly where Chad could copy it. Chad happily copied all 30 complex multiple-choice answers, feeling like a genius. What Chad didn't know was that Alex had spent the entire previous week memorizing a completely incorrect alternative answer matrix. Every single answer he wrote down during the first hour of the test was perfectly wrong, calculated to look plausible but score a flat 0. With exactly 5 minutes left on the exam clock, Alex quietly raised his hand and asked the teacher for a fresh, blank answer sheet, claiming he made an error. The teacher gave him a new sheet. In a frantic, brilliant burst of speed, Alex copied his real, correct answers onto the new page, leaving Chad sitting there with a page full of absolute garbage. The test papers were collected immediately after. 2 weeks later, the final grades were posted on the main bulletin board. Alex scored a perfect 100%, securing his spot at an elite university. Chad, however, got a flat 0. Because it was a state exam, a 0 triggered an automatic academic fraud investigation. The board noticed Chad's wrong answers perfectly matched the incorrect matrix Alex had initially designed. Chad was stripped of his sports captaincy, suspended from school, and his scholarship was permanently revoked. He had to repeat the entire year while Alex watched from the graduation stage. But let me tell you about a corporate snake. At my current marketing firm, there was an ambitious senior executive named Sarah who was notorious for stealing ideas from her creative team. She would sit quietly in brainstorming sessions, write down everyone's best concepts, and then pitch them directly to the CEO in private meetings, taking full credit for the profit increases. She recently stole a massive campaign idea from a quiet junior copywriter named Mark. Mark had spent 3 months developing a pitch for a major multi-million-dollar beverage client. Sarah found his pitch deck on the shared office server, copied it to her personal flash drive, and presented it to the board the next morning as her own creation. She received a massive promotion and a corner office, while Mark was completely ignored. Mark didn't complain to HR because Sarah was close friends with the HR director. Instead, Mark decided to play a much longer, psychological game. He knew Sarah was completely technologically illiterate and relied heavily on the creative team to build her actual presentation files. 2 months later, the company was preparing a pitch for their biggest client of the year, a highly traditional international bank. Mark volunteered to build the master PowerPoint presentation slide deck for Sarah's big pitch. He designed a beautiful, professional presentation on the surface. But hidden deep within the slide transitions and automated media triggers, he embedded an advanced macro script. The pitch was held in a massive auditorium packed with the bank's top executives and our entire company board. Sarah stood at the podium, completely confident, and pressed the remote to transition to the crucial financial projection slide. The moment she clicked the button, the macro script activated. The projector screen suddenly glitched, bypassing her data charts entirely. In their place, a hidden audio file began blasting a recording of Sarah from an office happy hour, where she was loudly laughing and calling the bank's conservative board of directors a bunch of ancient, clueless dinosaurs who don't understand business. The auditorium went dead silent. Sarah's face turned completely pale as she frantically mashed the remote buttons, trying to skip the slide, but the script had totally locked down the computer's keyboard interface. The insulting audio played for 2 full minutes on loop. The bank executives stood up in unison, insulted, and walked out of the room, instantly canceling their contract with our firm. Sarah was fired before she even left the stage. Mark was promoted to her position the following Monday because he was the only one who had a backup campaign ready to save the company's reputation. It was a flawless victory. But speaking of victories, let's talk about neighborhood wars. My uncle lived next to a guy who owned a massive, loud rooster in a suburban zone where farm animals were strictly illegal. The rooster screamed at 4 in the morning every single day. My uncle politely asked the neighbor to move the bird indoors at night, but the neighbor told him to mind his own business and turned up his music. My uncle called the local homeowners association and city code enforcement, but the bureaucratic process was moving way too slowly, and he was losing critical sleep. Being an electrical engineer, my uncle decided to use his technical knowledge to solve the problem permanently. He knew roosters rely heavily on perceived light cycles to trigger their morning crowing behavior. He went out and purchased a highly specialized, industrial-grade, programmable laser projector with a narrow beam. He mounted it securely inside his attic window, aiming it directly through a small gap in the neighbor's backyard chicken coop structure. The laser was completely invisible to anyone walking by outside. He programmed the projector to flash an ultra-bright, microscopic pulse of light directly into the coop every single night at precisely 1 o'clock in the morning. The rooster, sensing a sudden flash of daylight, would wake up and start crowing at 1 o'clock a.m. in total darkness. The neighbor would wake up furious, screaming at his own bird to shut up. But my uncle wasn't done yet. He changed the timer variables every night. The next night, the light flashed at 2 o'clock a.m. The night after that, it was 11:30 p.m. The rooster's internal biological clock became completely shattered. It was crowing random patterns all night long, keeping the arrogant owner awake for a solid week straight. The owner grew so completely exhausted and sleep deprived that he ended up getting into a massive argument with his own wife about the bird. They couldn't take it anymore. The neighbor finally cracked, packed up the rooster, and drove it to a farm outside the city limits just so he could finally get a full night of sleep. My uncle never said a word, just watched him load the cage into his truck while sipping hot coffee. But that's a mild neighborhood dispute compared to what happened to a greedy mechanic I know who tried to scam an old lady out of her entire life savings. An auto repair shop owner tried to charge my elderly grandmother $3,000 for a basic oil change and brake pad replacement, claiming her entire engine block was dangerously cracked. She called me crying, so I went down there. I knew cars well, and her engine was perfectly fine. The mechanic refused to lower the price, holding her car hostage until we paid. I paid it, but I took immediate digital action. I knew his shop relied entirely on local Google Map reviews for business. I didn't write bad reviews. Instead, I used a marketing tool to target his shop's exact physical location with hyper-local ads for a rival mechanic shop right down the street, offering free diagnostics and 50% off repairs. Within a month, his shop lost 70% of its customer base to the rival. He went out of business, all because he tried to scam a grandma. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.